Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the latest episode of What We Do in the Shadows, Pride Parade. And this was a strange episode. I enjoyed it when everything kind of tied together in about the last 5 minutes, but I overall think that each kind of story beat that we got in this episode should have had its own episode to focus on. And that what we were seeing is that being kind of condensed down and then at the end just thrown back together for the crazy kind of escalation that happens in other kind of comedy shows. Now granted, it was funny as shit what we got, but it's just like, normally they've got a better kind of path to escalation, like the one with the trial and having to deal with like Guillermo killing vampires and then going after them, and then for the killing of the vampires, and then seeing like the baby and all that, just like escalating and escalating and all that. This was just like, oh, okay, we've got Sean running for comptroller for some odd inexplicable reason to attempt to get the Rangers back to Staten Island, which I don't know how that kind of works with a comptroller. Laszlo and Guillermo pretty much working on figuring out what the fuck's going on with him, because in the last episode, Laszlo just thought he had the shits, but then Guillermo spills the beans. He's like, what the fuck, man? Nandor being kind of jealous of them kind of working together, and then Nadja switching bodies with the doll, which incidentally enough was something that me and my one friend Reverb Jill Sandwiches was talking about, like, and they could do something like that, because at least with what's been going on with Nadja so far, the doll was kind of the more interesting character, and we kind of got a little bit of that with what kind of goes on here. So let's kind of work onto it. In the main kind of crux, the foundation that we get with this is Sean running for the comptroller and asking the housemates for help because he's trying to target the LGBTQ and gay demographic, and he went to them for that. And just seeing that, it's like, oh, okay. He's got like the barest minimum kind of like understanding, like the most basic surface level kind of shit. And it's just like, alright, this isn't gonna go horribly. And Guillermo just looking at the camera just like, oh god, this isn't... Especially since Sean has been hypnotized so much that I'm surprised he's able to utilize utensils to eat. And that he was able to try and tell one of his buddies to not fire off a gun because of all the shit that's gone on with his brain scramblies and all that. But his basic kind of thing is to like do a pride parade thing, have some really just god-awful shirts, and Laszlo's like, I'll do this shit, we'll make a float for you and all that. And Nandor's like, oh, because they were trying to figure out the word for like float or whatnot, and Nandor's like, chariots, flaming, dragging bodies behind and shit like that. It's like, oh god. But Laszlo is the one that really takes the cake and has been kind of like my favorite at the moment of this season, because he just gets the best fucking shit. And now granted, Nandor's shit when we get to the end is just fucking amazingly comedic gold, but we just see that he is like really kind of jealous of what's going on, as we then see this juxtaposition of him being sad and jealous and kind of angry a little bit about Guillermo spending so much time with Laszlo, and Laszlo trying to figure out what the fuck's going on with him. And that's where we get pretty much the best kind of stuff, as he's running experiments to figure out what the fuck's kind of going on with Guillermo. That he's got some... he's like in a weird fucked up kind of stage of turning into a vampire. He kind of is, but kind of isn't. He's doing all this stuff. UV light doesn't affect him, but it affects Laszlo. He's like, ow, shit, fuck. And he like wiped sweat from Guillermo. I was like, okay, that kind of works a little bit. Ow, burning. And he's like, I'm a daywalker like Blade? Yes, exactly like Blade. And the way he just says and pronounces words in this episode, god damn it, I fucking love the actor for Laszlo. He just fucking knows his timing and how to turn content amazingly well. And then we see them doing all these kinds of experiments. He looks at Guillermo back, and we see essentially these little chicken wing fucking bat wings back there. So like, holy shit! We see him trying to do vampire super speed. He also had run through the housemates of figuring out what's kind of going on with what are some kind of things that would prove that you're a vampire and all that? Counting rice, which is more like individual grains of rice, which is kind of more of a fairy thing, but actually kind of affects vampires, as we see, like throwing a sock into a river or whatnot and having to retrieve it. All these different kind of things, and that kind of links up to it after we see that Laszlo is trying to test him for telekinesis, and Guillermo can actually lift something telepathically with his mind. He's like, oh shit, fuck. And then he's like, all right, I need you to run on that treadmill for like, and give me 3 gallons of sweat. And then this kind of then links up later with Laszlo having the weirdest kind of just fucking, hey, we're just doing this kind of like, just fucking bit. Let's fucking do it. It's like, all right, it works, but it's kind of just like, there used to be better flow and kind of better connective and cohesiveness of what was going on in the episodes. I like it, but they've worked better at this. So this kind of comes at the end as we see them kind of figuring out what's kind of going on. We see that Nandor and Laszlo do have to count the grains, but Guillermo doesn't. We see a triple jump where Laszlo does hop, hop, and then the third one's better. And Sean sees him, but he's like, fuck it, whatever. And then we learn that sometimes jumping is better than flying, because Laszlo can only fly as low as the lowest cloud. But Nando's like, I was been fucking to outer space, man. And it's like, have you? It's like, yeah. And then he pretty much has to prove it to him as he then goes on his own little mini thing to fly into outer space. So we'll get to that bit at the end because of what kind of goes on. So we then also see Laszlo pop off and actually take Guillermo's sweat and make it into sunscreen, cream kind of shit. He slathers himself. He fucking goes outside during the day. He can walk outside during the day, and he's fucking fine. It's like, wow. And Sean's like, hey, how's the foot going? It's going great, man. Can I get a lawn chair? And then he goes to the beach, fucking kicks a soccer ball. They're like, fuck you guys. And then he like actually plays in the water. I'm like, Laszlo, that's kind of not a smart thing to do. You could get like fucking roasty toasty bolosty, like just bly mode, fucked off, dead. But we see that he essentially just gets a very bad sunburn. It's like, this is an interesting development. I mean, if the housemates wanted to get really interesting and technical, they just figure out that Guillermo could be a factory for creating sunproof sunscreen for vampires. Now granted, that would really go, they would be fucking horrendous and assholes to do that, and essentially you would hope that they would bring him into it, but you know they would just fucking put him like on a treadmill down in the basement and be like, run bastard, run, give us some fucking sweat and shit. It could really lead to some interesting weird ass scenarios rather than just an off bit where like Laszlo goes off and plays in the sun and then gets some sunburn that we see later on. While this is going on, the pride thing is pretty much in the background. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they could have done with that, but it's just in the background, and we get a little bit of it in the end. We see that the guide talks to Nadja the doll, and of course they've got unresolved issues, and the thing is the doll died as a virgin. And Nadja's like, what the fuck do you mean? She's like, we only did hand stuff. I died as a virgin. Can we like work with this? And they essentially do a Freaky Friday thing where they swap souls and vessels. And then we see the doll's spirit in Nadja's body doing this stuff with her body, and Nadja's like, yeah, I'll help you get fucked. How about that shit? So we get the speed dating bit where we see her doing old world kind of school kind of shit, talking about dowries and like gooses and shit, and just being fucking asshole. And the doll's like, come on, let's go. And she's like, all right, I didn't want to do this, but we're going to try and do something with one of the housemates. And then they pretty much bring up, like, oh, probably Laszlo. I mean, he's not just husband. Really? Yeah. And be like well, no, granted, we get there eventually, but they go for Colin Robinson. And it's really funny because Colin's like, this isn't something to like fuck with me, right? Why the fuck would you go with this? And she's like, you're here. Come on, we're fucking handed to you. You're on a silver platter kind of shit. He's like, all right. And then they attempt to go through with it, but he's like, no, I'm actually more into the doll. It's like, yeah, that tracks. Yeah, that fucking tracks. So now she's like, all right, fuck, this isn't working. Give me my body back. And she's like, fuck that shit. And then they're trying to figure out what's going on, and the guy's like, oh no, I'm sorry, I can't remove a vessel, like a spirit against its will. And Colin's like, but could you put another soul in there? And their just great plan is to take Colin Robinson's soul and put it into Nadja's body to essentially kind of fight with the doll's spirit. And that's kind of nuts because this thing gives Nadja's actress, at least in the beginning, different kind of ways to kind of do stuff of acting as Nadja and then having to act a crazy around as Colin Robinson as well, as they're kind of fighting control for her body a little bit and trying to figure out what to do. And it's like, well, shit. And then she's like, well, that did, Nadja in the doll's body's like, well, that didn't work. Fucking push his body over. Alright. So then we pretty much get to the night of the Pride Parade. Sean pretty much doing his thing. Sees Laszlo pop up. Like, what the fuck's going on with you? Oh, I got a little son. And just like bringing out Nadja to sing. And then we find out what happens when you have two souls in one vessel. For some freaky fucking reason, we got Nadja on the front, and then we got Colin Robinson's head in the back, which is like, what the fuck? As they're both singing It's Raining Men. It was freaky as fucking shit. The audience is like, what the fuck am I looking at? Did somebody put acid in my beer or something? A kid starts crying, and I'm like, I'm with you there, kid. I don't even know what's kind of going on right now, and even though I'm not moved to tears, I fucking get it. And then this dovetails to the crescendo of Nandor had decided to get some GoPros. He's like, thank you for the baby cameras. And he starts flying up into space. I'm like, quick question, my good dude. The sun's in outer space. Would it not flash fry your ass? But Nandor never asked the question about that stuff. He's like going up, deals with an airplane, being like, hey! And then he gets up there and he's like, oh shit, I can't breathe. It's like, I'm in outer space, motherfuckers! And just seeing him, now granted, the sun's not a problem for him at this point. It might be because the Earth's in the way or whatnot, but then he starts falling down back to Earth. He's like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Burns up in re-entry, his clothes are burnt, and then he fucking thunder crashes down, and he fucking stands up. He's like, I was to outer space, naked as fucking shit, hair all which way, and it's just like, oh my god, it went to such fucking insanity in the last 5 minutes, and it strangely tied everything together. Now granted, that's a kind of rare thing to be able to do, and granted, usually this show is able to kind of pull that kind of shit off, but everything is kind of condensed in a way that I don't like. Now granted, I like how we got at least funny fucking crazy ass conclusion of things going on, seeing the Pride Parade going on, fucking Guillermo holding his sign, being like the gay guy or whatnot. It's like, oh my god, I'm just like, yeah, they just keep fucking over Guillermo. So, even though initially I was, I guess, like, Jesus, like, how many times does Guillermo have to have this bad kind of luck go on? This at least shows the interesting kind of potential of being this weird, not vampire kind of thing. Where, okay, as long as there's potential and you kind of explore it, of him having weird, different kind of powers that, I don't know, they could essentially kind of fuck around with. That's the interesting kind of stuff. Like, him making pretty much sunproof sunblock for vampires would be an interesting kind of tactic that dovetails of their kind of failed business venture with Nadja's club. Colin Robinson is still kind of screwed over. I kind of want more kind of fallout from Laszlo raising him. Well, not fallout, but like repercussions from that going on instead of just going back to status quo of him like, okay, him being a server, that kind of changes it up a little bit, but I want to see any kind of things that Laszlo taught him or whatnot kind of bleed through into his character and his persona and what kind of works on with that. And all of this stuff had more potential than just being kind of like stitched together into, there's 4 kind of concrete stories that could have had a lot of kind of cool room to kind of roll around and grow, and they just stitched them together and did kind of get at least a funny, crazy, insane resolution at the end, because it doesn't just end with that Pride Parade going on. Guillermo and Guillermo and Nandor pop back up in the residence, and we see that they're at least back onto more of a kind of status quo, and they walk in and we see that Laszlo and is fucking Nadja, but Nadja as the doll and Colin Robinson's face, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Where he's pretty much like going at her, and then oh yeah, the other one was that like vampires go limp after 2 pumps. We never got any kind of scientific discovery on that part, but it just popped back into my head because Liza's pumping away. We see that Nadja Doll's like, yeah, and then her head pops up, and we see Colin Robinson's head is like, what the fuck? I didn't like the strength of what we do in the shadows is going to places that you really wouldn't expect with things just going out of nowhere. It's like, holy fucking shit! It's just like, yep. I did not expect this kind of episode tonight, and this kind of conclusion. But the whole thing is, they usually have better escalation of this kind of stuff. Not that normally that you would see it, but after the fact, you'd be able to kind of see how it built up to that. Like the trial, or any of the kind of best kind of episodes of like the fucking witch's hat with fucking Simon, and everything kind of going on with that. Actually, this mirrors that kind of stuff as well, with at least that one episode with the home improvement. Overall, I enjoyed it most because of how it ended, tied everything together, and went fucking insane. Otherwise, I would have been like, this is too schizophrenic of an episode. Everything's kind of everywhere, and each has their own potential, but they aren't fulfilling their potential because we've got so much stuff going on. Again, 4 stories that could have been 4 episodes that you dived into and really gave better material to everyone involved. Though granted, Guillermo did really well, and Andor was fucking great by the end of it. Laszlo, of course, has been really the crack out. Nadja, when doing this stuff with the dolls, pretty good. The guide is cool, and I like seeing her kind of utilized more. Granted, I think her strength at the moment is being utilized sparingly, whereas that they don't kind of like have to try and figure out what they need to do with her. They instead kind of have an idea of what's going on. And Colin Robinson Nadja and Colin Robinson have really got the short shaft, in my opinion, in this season so far. Now, granted, we have more episodes. We'll have to see what kind of goes on with them, but hopefully they get better due as we go on. So those are my opinions on the episode. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.